Mr. President, could I have privilege of the floor?
You may.
Members, I would like to have you help me welcome a 20-year combat veteran from the U.S. Army. He initially enlisted in the Army in 1996 and retired in 2017. 20-year combat veteran, also served as the Carbon County Chairman, Mr. Joey Corretti IV from Saratoga, Wyoming. If you'd help me welcome him to the...
Senator Groot, oh, you're just, all right. Okay, we're going to start with a little bit of entertainment. Sean Hess, a Western singer and guitarist, grew up in Cheyenne, now makes his home in Laramie. His mother is Lori Millen Garrison, who served in the House of Representatives. I think she was in the Senate too as well, I may be wrong. Sean's been performing for about 8 years. Privileged that he stopped by the Senate to sing for us this afternoon before he heads to Nashville, Birmingham, and New Orleans. Please give Sean a warm welcome.
Hey, thank you.
Actually, I'm going to pull one out of my office. We have a former representative sitting in my office that probably ought to come in and get recognized. You going to come out of there? Now, Senator Byrd, or Representative Byrd, where's he at? There he is. Come on in and listen. Hey, welcome, Representative Byrd. It's old time. Go ahead, John. Welcome.
All right. It's a little different than the dive bars and honky tonks that I'm used to, but I'm going to play a song called A Tear for You. I wrote this, started writing this when I was playing across Wyoming last spring. Played in Daniel, Wyoming at the Green River Bar, and then I played in Mountain View, Wyoming. And I camped out after both those shows, and last spring was real wet, and there's wild onions everywhere. And that's all I could smell both nights. Still nice though. When the cold rains roll and the silver sage is shining, when the wild onions bloom, a tear for you. In a simple act of kindness, never needing reason why, and in any open hand, a tear for you. If there's one thing I know is true, I know these things the way I do, all thanks to you. In a lesson learned in love, or any other worth the learning, and in those you find in time, a tear for you. If there's one thing I know is true, I know these things the way I do, all thanks to you. If there's one thing I know is true, I know these things the way I do, all thanks to you. Thanks so much. I'm going to do one more that's kind of comical and a little sad. Most of my songs are heartbreak songs, but this one's kind of just somewhere in the middle. Spending time alone. This is called Roadhouse Blues, the other one. guess I fell asleep on the couch again. I guess I left the television on. The DVD menu of Roadhouse keeps playing on and on. Looks like one TV dinner just wasn't enough. What does beef Merlot mean anyhow? Is the taste in my mouth just the flavor of life for me now? What does anything matter after everything is gone? I'm waiting for a time when where I am is somewhere. It doesn't feel quite so nice being all alone. I am a single father now. Oh, but I am my only child. So I make no rules, and I let myself run wild. 'Cause what's one more day without bathing myself, changing clothes or combing my hair? What's the use in anything when nobody's there? What does anything matter after everything is gone? I'm waiting for a time when where I am is somewhere. It doesn't feel quite so nice being all alone. Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, sure. You take care. Good to see you, Randy.
Thank you. I just asked him why his mother wasn't here today. She said she's in prison today. I'll correct that a little bit. She's actually a parole officer. Or is on the state parole board. But it makes for a good country and western song for sure. So, do we have any reports from the House? We do. We just will get them reeled in case we...
From the House of Representatives, Mr. President, the following messages are all dated March 7, 2024. Message number 269, concurrence requested. Mr. President, Senate File 86, School Safety and Security Funding, passed the House on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 52, noes 10. The House respectfully asks the Senate to concur. Message number 268. Mr. President, the following messages on third reading passed. Senate File 69, Hospice Care Reimbursement, passed the House on third reading. Ayes 43, noes 19. Message number 270, Senate File 89, Veterans Ad Valorem Exemption Amount, passed the House. Ayes 57, conflict 5. Message number 271. Mr. President, Senate File 100, Prompt Payment of Insurance Claim, passed the House on third reading. Ayes 62. Signed, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you, Randy. Senator Nethercott, if you're ready on message 262 concerning Senate File 77. Can we have it read in, please?
Message number 262, referencing Senate File 77, Homeland Defense, Infrastructure Reporting and Investigating.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move for concurrence on message number 262 on Senate File 77 and ask for your vote of aye. Good senators, what the House did is made some nice amendments. Specifically, they allowed for 15 days for the county clerks to report land transactions as opposed to immediately. Certainly a fair change there. And they changed the geographic radius from 10 miles down to 5 miles. And with that, that's all they did. And so pretty easy changes. That doesn't change the bill in any substantial way. And I'd ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Nethercott. Motion is the Senate do concur on Senate File 77 and vote aye. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Senate File 77, concurrence roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis excused. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Cole? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll? Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 77, concurrence, 30 aye, 1 excused.
By your vote, you have conferred on Senate File 77. Senator Scott, are you ready on message 246 concerning Senate File 19?
Yes, sir, Mr. President.
Can we have it read in, please?
Message number 246, referencing Senate File 119, developmental preschool funding.
Senator Scott.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate do concur on House amendments to Senate File 119, developmental preschool funding, as that, and the amendments are outlined in message 246. Mr. President, I recommend that we do approve because our colleagues in the House did good work that will make absolutely no difference in the future. And this is on the developmental preschool funding bill. As you will recall from the discussion here, the bill updated the funding formula, had an appropriation to reflect that. The update of the funding formula is needed in the bill. That's why the bill is needed. But the appropriation was handled in the budget. And this House amendment provides a $16 million for cost adjustment. The budget bill has got 12-some million in it. So the developmental preschool's got 3/4 of what they wanted. And the budget bill contains a provision that makes the budget bill govern over this bill, which is appropriate because it is an ongoing necessary expense of the government. So it ought to be that way. And I think it's going to stick in the budget bill that way. And in that case, this will have no effect. This would have effect only if something drastic that is totally unexpected happened to the preschool funding in the budget, and it's just not going to. So we can safely adopt this amendment, and we can feel good about it, but it isn't going to make any difference, and the bill is needed. So I urge an aye vote, Mr. President.
Senator Scott, I'm going to have you restate your motion. You said Senate File 119. We need to have you.
It's Senate File 19.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move that we do adopt the House amendments to, as outlined in message number 246 on Senate File 19, developmental preschool
Very
funding.
good. Thank you. Well done. The motion is that the Senate do concur on Senate File 19 and vote aye. Chief Clerk will call the roll, please.
Concurrence vote, Senate File 19, roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis excused. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? I. McEwen. I. Nethercott. I. Pappas. I. Rothfuss. I. Salazar. Schuler. I. Scott. I. Steinmetz. I. Salazar. And President Driscoll.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Concurrence vote on Senate File 19, 30 aye, 1 excused.
By your vote, you have concurred on Senate File 19. Senator Kolb, are you ready on message number 269 on Senate File 86?
I am, Mr. President.
Can we have it read in, please?
Message number 296, referencing Senate File 86, School Safety and Security Funding.
Senator Kolb.
Mr. President, I move concurrence on Senate File 86 and ask for your favorable consideration. There was a few things done to this bill, and I'll explain it to the body. Originally, it had $100,000 funding from the school trust fund, and that was changed in the House to $480,000 from the general fund. Their logic was 48 school districts, $10,000 a school district. That's how they came up with that number. The major difference is, though, this is a one-time funding. It is not continuous, it's one time only. And that really explains what they had done over there. I think it effectively still does the same thing. Obviously, I was more in favor of what it came out of the Senate as, but as it went through their committee, this is what had happened to it to explain the history. I still ask for your concurrence and approval of the changes. Thank you, Mr. President.
Well done. Thank you, Senator Kolb. The motion is the Senate do concur on Senate File 86 and vote aye. The Chief Clerk will call the roll, please.
Senate File 86, concurrence roll call. Anderson? Aye. Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? No. Whiteman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis excused. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Garou? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Case aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 86, concurrence, 26 aye, 4 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, you have concurred on Senate File 86. Senator Dockstader, are you ready on message number 261 on? Oh, that's a joint conference committee. Okay. You just need, else. Senator Dockstader.
Just simply need to have you assign that conference committee formally for the record.
Okay, yeah, I do. I thought we were doing a deal, but I've got it. Conference committee on Senate File 42 will be Rothfuss Chairman, Cooper, Dockstader. Conference Committee on, Joint Conference Committee number 1 on Senate File 67 is Kinski Chairman, Hicks, and Beitman, Senator Hicks and Senator Beitman. Bills on third reading and final passage. House Bill 4, third reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 4, engrossed property tax refund program sponsored by the Revenue Committee, an act relating to property tax.
House Bill 4 having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill, House Bill 4 property tax refund program having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk will call the roll.
House Bill 4, third reading roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis excused. French? Aye. Murphy? Aye. Garou? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Kolb? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 4, 30 aye, 1 excused.
House Bill 4 property tax refund program having received the affirmative vote of the majority of members elect the Senate, House Bill 4 has passed the Senate. House Bill 45, third reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 45, engrossed property tax exemption, residential structures and land, sponsored by Representative Crago, an act relating to taxation.
Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move third reading amendment number 1, House Bill 45. Ask for the body's favorable.
I don't have an amendment here. Could I have the amendment read in, please? Thank you. Did not have one.
House Bill 45, third reading amendment number 1 to engrossed copy, page 2, line 20 in.
Senator Barlow for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm sorry for stepping ahead of you and the good reader. Mr. President, I move third reading amendment number 1, House Bill 45, and ask for the body's consideration. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll see that the engrossed copy has 5. Our standing committee went to 3. This is just an offer to maybe get to the middle ground and hopefully move this bill along in a timely manner. Certainly, I recognize the body may want to go have a conversation, but this is just an opportunity maybe to strike the deal before we have to go down and have a conversation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion. Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would stand against this amendment. I think that 3% is really the fairest number we have. I've got the information here right in front of me. I kind of gave it to you the other day. CPIU average over the last 20 years has been about 2.5%. I also went a little bit further and looked at per capita personal income in the United States. And that's almost even more of a reflection of why we need to keep it at 3%. That average over the last 20 years has been 2.27%. So I think with 3%, we're staying in line with historical averages here, with a few anomalies, starting in 2021 with COVID and a lot of the troubles that we had there where inflation really cranked up when the U.S. government was flooding the market with a lot of deficit spending and monetizing that, which drove inflation. And I think we should stay with the 3%. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any discussion? Seeing none. We're voting on third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 45. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it. House Bill, third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 45 has failed to pass the Senate. We're back on the bill. Senate File 45, property tax exemption, residential structures and land. Having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? The Chief Clerk will please call the roll.
House Bill 45, third reading roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis excused. French? Aye. Murphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Kolb? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 45, 29 aye, 1 no, 1 excused.
House Bill 45, property tax exemption, residential structures and land. Having received the affirmative vote of the majority members elected to the Senate, House Bill 45 has passed the Senate. Senator Landon.
Mr. President, may I have privilege of the floor?
Granted.
Fellow senators, that was the final property tax bill that we considered during this session. I just wanted to rise, and I hope you feel the same way. I wanted to tip my Stetson hat to the chairman of the Revenue Committee, who has spent the last several months on these issues, has really worked hard to try to get this to the finish line. He worked hard throughout this room, and every one of the senators deserves my appreciation for the work that we've done to get these bills out of here and get some relief back home. But I think the chairman of the Revenue Committee deserves a little bit of applause for all the work that he's done.
Hear, hear. Senator Beitman, I get to talk ahead of you. So yeoman's work from a freshman chairman, I'm telling you. Heavy lift, one of the most substantial movements we've had, and it was really do honestly appreciate it. I'll give you the floor now, Senator Beitman.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to the good chairman of Judiciary, but one man can't do anything in this body. It takes everybody, and takes all the good co-sponsors of House Bill 45 and the lead sponsor. Everybody brought something to the table. We met a lot of times upstairs to hammer out these proposals, but no, one person cannot take credit for this. This is all of our doing, and it's folks down the hall. It's a collective effort. So thank you all for all your hard work, and we'll keep moving. Thank you, Mr. President.
Well done. House Bill 92, third reading of the House file.
House Bill 92, Protection of Parental Rights, sponsored by Representative Stiff, an act relating to parental rights.
House Bill 92, Protection of Parental Rights, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk will please call the roll.
House Bill 92, third reading roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis excused. French? Aye. Murphy? I. Guru. I. Hicks. I. Hutchings. I. Ide. I. Jones. I. Kinsky. I. Cole. I. Landon. I. Larson. I. McEwen. I. Nethercott. I. Pappas. I. Rothfuss. No. Salazar. I. Schuler. I. Scott. I. Steinmetz. I. President Driscoll.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Guru, aye to no. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 92. 28 aye, 2 no, 1 excused.
House Bill 92, Protection of Parental Rights, having been read three separate, House Bill 92, Protection of Parental Rights, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of members elected to the Senate, House Bill 92 has passed the Senate. House Bill 125, third reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 125 engrossed, repeal gun-free zones and preemption amendments, sponsored by Representative Harrelson, an act relating to concealed weapons.
There are amendments. Could I have the first one read in, please?
House Bill 125, third reading amendment number 1 to engrossed copy, page 2, line 18 after.
Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to move third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 125 and ask for your serious consideration. This amendment, I think will help this bill. I think it'll make it stronger. And I think really, if we think back to what 125 is all about, it's all about making things safer for our kids, our adults that are at government meetings as well as colleges. I focus just on the school, the public school folks on this particular amendment. And really, I started thinking about it even before we had our meeting, because I just felt like, again, I was thinking in terms of the schools that already had passed the legislation to arm teachers, and I thought, gosh, wouldn't it be nice if, not only teachers having to get permission to carry, and also law enforcement is notified who those teachers are. So that way, if you have a school resource officer, they know who those people are, or that person, it might just be one person, who knows. So I just felt like if we're gonna go ahead and pass this bill, which it seems I have a lot of support, maybe we should also have those folks that want to conceal carry and go into a school district, that they should maybe have to contact the school superintendent. Is it an onerous thing? I don't think so. I think you can go and you say once a year, hey, I'm gonna, conceal carry. And that way, at least the school resource officer and maybe those other people that might be armed that have already passed, all of the stuff that they needed to do for their training would know who those people were. Really, what we're talking about is safety. And what I have always worried about with this whole thing was just, what happens if there is an active shooter? And you have a school resource officer and you have somebody who you don't know if they've had training, you don't know who they are, they come in with a gun. I just felt like, gosh, you could have innocent people caught in the crosshairs. But if someone knew that this person, was on the list to be able to pack, to be able to carry it in, I think it maybe would help me at least feel a little bit better about this. I don't know if it'll help our staff and our students and other people. I'm sure some of you have been inundated with many of the emails that I have. There's still a lot of folks that are concerned. So this amendment is just basically to try to add an extra layer of safety, because that's what this bill is all about, trying to make everything safer by allowing people to carry. If it's too onerous for some people, then I actually had an interesting guy call me yesterday from my area, and I asked him about this. I said, I've got an amendment on this bill. He watches everything. And he said, yeah. And I said, but I just don't know if it'll pass. Should I go ahead and throw it out there anyway? Because I think, it will make the bill better. He said, you said the right thing. If you think it'll make the bill stronger, you think it'll make the bill better, don't second guess yourself, just throw it out there. People can vote it up or vote it down. So that's really what I intend to do with this amendment. I don't want to, muddy the waters with this bill, because I think most folks have made up their mind. This is just a way to maybe kind of put some people at ease around the state in our school systems. Maybe it'll help teachers, maybe it'll help parents. I don't know if it will or not. But the bottom line is, he said the right thing to me. Do the right thing based on your constituents. But he did say one other thing that kind of muddied my waters just a little bit. He said, just remember, you have adults that are teaching on these systems. You have 3 grandkids that are going to these school systems, and they're your constituents too. So make sure that whatever you do, you keep your family in mind as well. So that made a big movement on me. So I hope you'll hopefully vote it up. If not, thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, Senator Schuler. Further discussion. Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. President. So in the amendment, it says, any person who intends to carry a concealed weapon shall notify the school district in writing, and it should be effective for 1 year. So we're talking about something in writing that's going to be on record for a year. So I just want to take a walk back in history, and only because I hope that the chamber looks at some of these things and we can apply them as we go forward as years to come, that there's some institutional knowledge about how things work. So in 2002, the newspaper up in your neck of the woods, Mr. President, asked the Department of Criminal Investigation to provide a list of concealed carry permit holders. And they said it was their right to have that list so they could look it over. And that department denied that request, and then it ended up in the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, simply put, what good is a concealed weapon permit if the identity of those who are issued such a permit is of general public knowledge? If we were to, I'm sorry, let me start over. If we were to hold that list of those issued concealed permits weapons, or that they may be released, if we were to hold that they may be released to the general public, such would defeat the very purpose of the concealed weapon law itself. So that's the Supreme Court right there speaking on that kind of subject. If these names get into the school system on a list in writing, this is a total different layer of government that a FOIA request could get, and the only way we could stop it is that person goes to court again, goes to the Supreme Court and spends $20,000, $50,000, whatever it costs now to go into those systems. So on and against amendment, it's bad for policy, it's bad for people's privacy, and pretty much if you're concealed carrying and someone knows it, you're not doing it right.
Mr. President, on and against this amendment, and I call for ayes and noes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to clarify some things, this is not, those folks, if they did decide to do this, and if this amendment passed, this would not be part of the public record. It would go to the superintendent of schools only, just to make that completely clear. So hopefully you'll understand that it doesn't say anything about everybody. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry in your town will know who's concealed carrying. So just wanted to make that clear. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. We're voting on third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 125. Roll call has been asked. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Roll call vote on third reading amendment number 1, House Bill 125. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? No. Beitman? No. Boner? No. Bouchard? No. Brennan? No. Case? No. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? No. Ellis excused. French? No. Furphy? No. Guru? Aye. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? No. Kinski? No. Kolb? No. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? No. Pappas? Aye. Salazar? No. Schuler? Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? No. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Steinmetz? No. President Driscoll?
No.
No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. On the amendment, third reading amendment number 1 to 125, 6 aye, 24 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 125 has failed to pass the Senate. We have a second amendment. We have it read in, please.
House Bill 125, third reading amendment number 2 to engrossed copy, corrected copy, page 3, line 11, after.
Senator Nethercott.
Mr. President, I request to withdraw third reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 125.
Without objection, third reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 125 has been withdrawn. We're back on the bill. Senator Landon.
Mr. President, thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity. Again, I just wanted to rise, fellow senators, and actually show appreciation for the opportunity for the debate that we've had on this bill. This morning, the good senator from Fremont County came over and we had a good visit. And his concern was that I might have taken personally anything that he said on the floor, and that's the furthest thing that I ever do with his friendship. That's not going to happen. And but I so appreciated that because you know, there's a couple things about this bill, Mr. President, that maybe some don't know, and that is that I'm the only one in this room who has been through a campus shooting. I was there, and it's a horrific and life-changing thing. We, to this day, have members of that staff and at the college in the center part of the state who have some post-traumatic issues related to that particular incident. Boy, I would give anything if this bill would change anything that could have happened that day. Unfortunately, if I had been carrying that day, there wouldn't have been any chance whatsoever for me to take a gun and do any good with it. It was over that quickly. So is this a safety bill? I don't know, Mr. President. I don't know. It's okay that we cash it, that we call it that. I mean, I think that's hopefully something down the road that maybe it will do. Mr. President, my hesitation a couple of nights ago was based on the fact that I was concerned that we couldn't get the bill quickly enough to where I thought it needed to be. That has in part been borne out. But that's the will of the body, and I respect it. I respect that the Senate felt like that bill was far enough. It's good enough. I told you before this all started that I care pretty deeply about the Second Amendment, and I've shown that through the years. Today, I know that my father-in-law likes this bill, and I'm going to show him support. And I'm hopeful, senators, that we would be willing in subsequent sessions to come down and be willing to consider some of the concerns that have been brought up as we work forward. And if this bill goes into law, I certainly hope that we can consider our hospitals and our colleges and our universities and watch this carefully. But thank you for the opportunity, Mr. President.
Clear discussion. Seeing none. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, on and against the bill, and we've had this discussion many times before. I don't think the facts have necessarily changed, but I think it's important to reiterate the fact that as we look at all of the places that we're discussing here, we look at schools. The teachers I have not heard from asking for legislation like this. I haven't heard from students asking for legislation like this. What we have right now is a policy where our locally elected boards of trustees hear directly from their constituents and have an opportunity to make decisions on this topic. And there's some parameters in statute that provide flexibility. So we have local control and we have limitations. And that system has worked. It's worked for as long as we've had statehood, and it's worked fine. When we reflect on our cities, towns, and counties, what this bill does is says to our city councils, our county commissioners, your judgment is not good enough here. Because right now, Mr. President, you know as well as I do, that there is the possibility, if those local elected officials choose to allow this bill to take place locally, based on the needs and interests of the constituents of local communities, those cities, towns, and counties, based on the opinions of the duly elected officials that represent those constituents. And by and large, it hasn't happened because those local decision makers, those closest to the people, have rejected this idea time and again on behalf of their people. But this bill says you no longer have that. We're taking that away from you. We're withdrawing local control, local responsibility, and local decision-making, and we're making decisions for everyone. A uniform, one-size-fits-all, under all circumstances, by this chamber here. When we look to our university and our colleges, each is governed by a board of trustees. Those trustees have the authority to manage and regulate this type of activity on those campuses. They could already do this. But those governing entities, on behalf of their faculties, their staffs, and their students, have not taken this action. So, Mr. President, once again, we'll remove their authority. We will take away that local control through this legislation and say that this time, once and for all, we're disempowering you to make decisions about what is and isn't appropriation for safety based on the unique circumstances of your communities, your school facilities, your students, your populations, and we're saying that we know best, and we are always right. And one size shall fit all. That's what this bill does. It provides no flexibility. And that's regrettable, Mr. President. We've resisted this legislation for many years because of the chorus of voices in opposition, the chorus of voices in fear of the implications of this legislation, because while there are many folks in the state of Wyoming that feel safer when they're carrying a gun, there are many more that feel less safe knowing that those individuals are nearby and carrying a gun. Often untrained, unqualified, no certification necessary. If you're old enough, you can carry a deadly weapon, and apparently it's a good idea to carry it anywhere. So we care about the rights of those individuals that want to express that right, but completely dismiss those that will be in fear or potentially impacted by the actions of those individuals. No flexibility, no local control, once and for all decision through this bad bill. Mr. President, I understand and share a desire to protect Second Amendment rights, but we know time and again, courts have provided for opportunities for time, place, manner restrictions where safety is concerned.
Time.
So, Mr. President, I urge all of you to join me in opposing this legislation.
Further discussion. Senator McEwen.
Yeah, this is interesting. Mr. President, thank you, Mr. President. This is an interesting discussion. We're going to give our constitutional rights over to a government agency. And if they're going to deny our Second Amendment rights, what's next? First Amendment? Fourth Amendment? This is guaranteed in the Constitution. This isn't a menu of select. This is a shall not be infringed. And if we let school superintendents decide on this constitutional right, it won't be long before they're deciding on First Amendment rights. So I'm on for the bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Bouchard.
I just want to urge the body not to listen to the fear tactics. We walk into stores every day, and there's people all around us carrying guns. So where's the fear? If people were afraid, they wouldn't go in all the stores around us. They wouldn't be going into any businesses around us. They would have to roll up the towns and close Wyoming down. So yeah, there's no fear. Gun owners haven't shown that there's been some danger out there. And interestingly, we have 27 total states that have constitutional carry. And that says a lot about what's happening. That says a lot that we even have people without permits in 27 states now. And we don't see the sky falling and all the things that the fear that's placed every time we pass a pro-gun bill or try to pass a pro-gun bill. All those fears just don't come true. So this body can confidently vote with this bill, and the sky won't fall. On for the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I know we probably all have our minds made up on this bill, and that's fine. But there's one thing that keeps coming up over and over again, that we should be honoring local control and we shouldn't be making uniform laws. In Article 1, Section 34, it says uniform operation of general law. All laws in general nature shall have uniform operation. And so this is a general law. It is well within the scope of legislative duties and responsibilities to make a uniform law on a subject so important as our Second Amendment rights. And so I just wanted to set that record straight. Thank you, Mr. President.
Repeal gun-free zones and preemption amendments having been read 3 separate times. The question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk will please call the roll.
House Bill 125, third reading roll call. Anderson? No. No. Baldwin? No. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis excused. French? Aye. Furphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinsky? Aye. Kolb? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? No. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 125, 22 aye, 8 no, 1 excused.
House Bill 125, repeal gun-free zones and preemption amendments, having received the affirmative vote of majority members elect the Senate, House Bill 125 has passed the Senate. House Bill 166, third reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 166, engrossed, Education Savings Accounts 1, sponsored by Representative Closton, an act relating to education.
There are many amendments. We have amendment read in, please.
House Bill 166, third reading amendment number 1 to engrossed copy, corrected copy, page 29, line 2, delete.
Senator Scott.
Mr. President, I move adoption of this amendment. Mr. President, let's remember what this bill is about. It's about improving the performance of our public schools, something your Education Committee has been concerned with, and there have been numerous ways proposed of doing it. What happened here was a former member of the committee came up with a creative idea to combine a couple of the remedies and we brought forward a committee bill to do that. Through various maneuvers down in the House, it wound up as a private bill, somewhat reduced in scope a little bit, but still containing those two elements. And in the Senate Education Committee, there was considerable testimony that the part of it that related to the preschool programs was not quite ready for prime time yet, because we hadn't really adequately defined what we were trying to buy, and we were likely to wind up getting something rather different than what we hoped for. And, Mr. Chairman, so we took that out, but it remains a major concern for a number of the sponsors of the bill. And what I'm seeking to do is put in a remedy that I think will be a compromise. And that remedy is, okay, if we don't know what we're really seeking in the preschool area, let's do some pilot projects and find out and learn. And so what this amendment does is it provides for that 20% of the money that's appropriated here will go to some pilot projects limited to 5 counties, so that they really are pilot projects, don't go out of hand. State superintendent to manage it, develop a protocol for evaluation of it, review that with the Joint Education Committee and report to the Joint Education Committee on progress in a 5-year pilot program. Mr. President, I think that's a reasonable compromise that moves us forward on that part of the bill that was sought originally. I think it will, and I know there's partisans that want just one part and partisans that want just another part. I say let's unite in trying to improve our public school system, approve this amendment so we do get started in the preschool area, learn what we need to do, and I think it'll inform us not only what we need to do in the public area, but also maybe what we need to do with private day schools, if they're going to call themselves preschools. So I would urge us to adopt this amendment, and I think it'll give us a stronger bill, a better chance of passage, Mr. President. So on and for the amendment.
Further discussion? Senator Boner and then Salazar.
Hey, thank you, Mr. President. On and for the amendment, you'll see my name's on there also. Supporting it for slightly different reasons than our good education chairman. Mr. President, I look at this as an opportunity to provide more choice, more options for our young families. This is a way to let families who maybe don't have the opportunity to send their kids to preschool to have that opportunity. But also, I think bolsters a lot of our private schools throughout the state. It does offer that choice for pre-K, which I'm not necessarily opposed to outright. I do share a lot of the concerns about having, say, our government schools take over pre-K. I think that's a step too far. And I point out that so long as we were bolstering and strengthening the private side of the equation, as this amendment does, that does help with those concerns, alleviate those concerns, because we'll have this program, which will still be empowering the parents, not government, and we'll give this part of it a head start. So for those reasons, I ask for you to support the amendment.
Vote. We're voting on third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 166. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. Third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 166 has passed the Senate. Division being called. All in favor of third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 166, please stand. Those opposed, please stand. Okay. Those opposed. (14 to 16). Third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 166 has failed to pass the Senate. Reading clerk will read in the next amendment, please.
House Bill 166, third reading amendment number 2 to engrossed copy, page 12 after line 19, insert.
Senator Scott, or Boner, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the failure of the first amendment, this is no longer relevant. I ask to withdraw third reading amendment number 2.
Without objection, third reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 166 has been withdrawn. Third reading amendment number 3, could we have it read in, please?
House Bill 166, third reading amendment number 3 to engrossed copy, page 10, line 3, delete.
Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I took the advice of the good tall senator from yesterday, and I bring you this amendment, so I would move third reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 166. Mr. President, I think our landscapes in Wyoming are like some of the most spectacular landscapes in our country, certainly the best in the lower 48. And I hope we can keep it that way as we deal with all the development on that landscape. But I think about your ranch, Mr. President. I think about your ranch where you sit and have those campers and a very popular location next to that magnificent Devil's Tower. And I think that at one time there was 2 miles of sedimentary rock above your ranch, burying the monolith. We don't know exactly how it formed, but it was Devil's Tower that became this iconic piece of Wyoming. All that sediment was laid down over millions of years, going back for, from the Paleozoic, Neoproterozoic, Mesozoic, all these eons that were hundreds of millions of years long. Mr. President, we were like part of a kind of a flat place with lots and lots of sediment all across the state. But today we have these magnificent mountain ranges with the tilting up of the sandstones and the Chugwater Formation and the Ten Sleep Formation and all the shales. It's fabulous. It's taken eons to accomplish that. All that sedimentary rock can be dated. Originally, they dated it by the types of fossils, life that was in those formations. Well, how did they go from being horizontal to being with mountains and foothills? How did that happen? Well, there were several major events, one of which was the Laramide orogeny. That's a kind of a sexy sounding word, but it's not sexy at all. It's so sexy if you like geology, I guess. But that you think it has to do with Laramie, and it's kind of the same word. But Mr. President, it dealt with eons ago, probably 80 million years ago, with plate tectonics. And the fact that the Pacific plate kind of went under the continental plate of the US and began to raise not just the Rocky Mountains, but the Sierra Madres, the basin and range geology that we see. It created our greatest basins, which are the Wind River Basin. I'll put that one first. That's the place where the first oil well was drilled in Wyoming in 1884. Might have been the first well west of the Mississippi. Oil is life. It's carbon. It's formed from microscopic plant and animal. It's probably not the dinosaurs like the old commercials, and If you ever see me driving by the road, I've got one of those green dinosaurs because I value that company. It's very oil. We've talked about coal, first time I talked. We talked about fossil fishes. Today we're talking about oil. Vast deposits of petroleum that didn't happen in recent times, Mr. President. They happened eons and eons ago. That's the science. We've managed to date a lot of those events. Oil has different formations, and you can tell the most amazing thing about oil, it was in all those sedimentary layers, but because of the fracturing of the earth and the folding of the earth, it became trapped in certain places. And that became our great oil discoveries. That created the wealth of this landscape. We've got to honor that, Mr. President. We've got to honor all the evolution of life and the natural selection that formed those organic molecules that later became petroleum and also coal. And so that's what this amendment does. It's the same amendment as yesterday, but it takes out the restriction that they can't teach any other theory. But we have to teach the science. The science that we have been here a couple years longer than 6,000 years. And while there were many probable floods around the world, and there may have been one great flood, but the great flood didn't create all the layers. They didn't create the 2 miles of sediment that was formerly above your ranch, Mr. President. It might have helped, but there's more to it than that. And that's what this says, is that we need to respect science, and we need to, we fragmented into a society, Mr. President, that we're now using our own set of facts. What we need to do, now we're going to let children use their own set of facts because that's what we're going to teach them. We need a little more common understanding of the science, Mr. President, and I hope you'll support me in this amendment. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and against the amendment. This is exactly why homeschoolers fear the state. You're dictating to those who, quite frankly, are fundamentalist Christians who believe in a literal interpretation of the Bible. I'm one of them. I respect other people's opinion. I do. And I respect people who differ from my views. But I don't have to delete their ideas. I think I told you 2 days ago, my wife and I homeschool our son. We teach to him not only creationism, but we also teach evolution. I think it would be an injustice to our son not to give him all points of view. I don't believe that this is constitutional, this amendment. I don't believe that one opinion fits all. I reject this. I reject this. Mr. President, I ask for the yeas and nays.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too am one of those, and I'd like to give you some truthosaurus. I believe that God created the heaven and the earth, and I believe that the heavens declare the glory of God and the firmament his handiwork. I too believe that this amendment is unconstitutional, so I'm on and against it, and I'll give you the reason why. Article 1, Section 7 says, no absolute arbitrary power. Absolute arbitrary power over the lives, liberty, and property of free men exists nowhere in a republic, not even in the largest majority. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and against, and missing from our daily geology lesson was the fact that this also strips out the religious liberty protections that are in the bill. That is unconstitutional. I appreciate my colleague from Cheyenne talked about our state constitution. There's also been federal court cases that plainly state you cannot discriminate if you have this sort of program based off of religious preferences. This amendment is clearly in violation of that. I urge the body to resist this amendment for that reason.
Mr. President, I didn't like the amendment yesterday. It talked about creationism, and that's very broad. It includes not only some of the very literal interpretations of the Bible, but my interpretation, which says that the first chapter, first few verses of Genesis describe a creation, describe the Big Bang, give us a cause for the Big Bang. That's a very different form of creationism. Mr. Chairman, this amendment is relatively harmless. It describes what I think will happen with or without this amendment, that science instruction is going to include these things. It requires a parental acknowledgement, which I think is just added bureaucracy. And I would oppose the amendment on that score, Mr. Chairman, but I don't think this does anything fundamentally either helpful or harmful to the bill, and is really unnecessary.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, when you start looking at how scientists have these opinions, they vote on it. Did any of you elect any of these scientists to vote on opinions that we should believe? Trust the science, right? That's what they say. Look, homeschoolers, people that teach or want to go to independent schools or use independent learning, they certainly don't need this. On and against.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and for the amendment. I think what this amendment goes to is whether state funds are being used for fact-based, science-based, sectarian education, or, non-sectarian education, or for education that can be sectarian, which is clearly against the Constitution of the state of Wyoming. And we all take an oath, obviously, to uphold the Wyoming Constitution and to ensure that the legislation that we're passing is constitutional and is consistent with that. Now, this is a good discussion. The idea of would these schools, these entities that are taking these state funds, have to focus on a fact-based, science-based curriculum, or would they be free to teach a curriculum that is not rooted in science and further divides this type of discourse? And again, it's not to say, and this amendment clearly doesn't, nor does the legislation, that a private school can't teach whatever it wants, or that a religious school or a homeschool can't teach whatever it wants. That's not what this bill is about, Mr. President. It does not prescribe curriculum to religious schools. It does not prescribe curriculum to homeschools or private schools. It attempts to, through this amendment, influence curriculum for those schools that receive public funds. Only for schools that receive public funds, and that is different. That is the nuance here. We know that it says clearly in the Constitution that when we're using public funds, that it cannot be private school, it cannot be sectarian, and these are tenets that were laid down by the framers of the Wyoming Constitution for good purpose. So the question here is, do we want to disregard that? Do we want to turn our back on the Wyoming Constitution and say, you know what, we see it differently, we want to do things differently, and even though the plain reading of the language makes it pretty clear, we're we're going to find some loopholes and we're going to try and walk through those loopholes because we'd rather have what we want than be consistent with the spirit of the Constitution. This amendment is consistent with the spirit of the Wyoming Constitution. It just is. I urge you to adopt it and support it, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I would like to pose a question. If the amendment were worded differently, say, the science instruction shall include the study of biology, and that there are only two genders, and that men cannot become women, and that shall be part of the curriculum, and the agreement shall include a sworn statement by the public school agreeing to this limitation and limit the public funds to public schools. I would wager that the people supporting this amendment would be vehemently opposed to my amendment. And therein is the rub, Mr. President. We can't do this. It's completely out of order. Vote this thing down.
Mr. Chairman, I'm very grateful for the debate and the spirit in the Senate. Mr. President, we're talking about grants of $6,000 of taxpayer money to be given to families, $6,000 per child, to be used to procure education. I don't have any qualm at all with allowing private schools to teach what they want, to have a non-secular based course of education and instruction. But we've crossed the line into taxpayer money with this, Mr. President, and that's the point. So with taxpayer money, there's an obligation to not further non-secular ideals. Doesn't mean they can't be taught, but it means they also have to be taught. And the most fundamental thing in our differences about opinion of, say, fundamental versus other forms of religion deals with the age of the earth, the age of life on the earth, the evolution and development of human and other species, and whether natural selection exists. Scientifically, these are well-grounded. I reconcile this in my own religion. I love the tall senator when he talks about the Big Bang and the analogies with Genesis. That speaks to me, Mr. President, that the days of the Bible and the flood are metaphorical. And there were many floods all around the world, well documented, that huge ones. When the Black Sea filled up, that must have been an amazing event that happened for centuries and would have given rise to flood lore. Taxpayer money cannot go to religious instruction. 6,000-year-old earth, great flood that created the landforms that we see in Wyoming is religious instruction. It's not science. There's a way to reconcile them, and we need to. But you got to allow for children to hear the facts. Thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate it.
We're voting on third reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 166. Did we have a yea and nays called on this? Not. Did we or not? Okay, yeas and nays, thank you. I was pretty sure there was, but I wanted to make sure. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Third reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 166. Roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? No. Barlow? No. Beitman? No. Boner? No. Bouchard? No. Brennan? No. Case? Aye. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? No. Ellis excused. French? No. Furphy? No. Garou? Aye. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? No. Kinski? No. Cole? No. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? No. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Steinman? No. President Driscoll?
No.
No. Closing vote? Closing. Vote closed. On the amendment, 4 aye, 26 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, third reading amendment number 3 to House Bill 166 has failed to pass the Senate. We are back on the bill. Question being called. Up, almost. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, where this bill is at this point in time leaves the most unconstitutional parts of the original legislation that came over here and was drafted by the other member in trying to put together a bill that would potentially be constitutional based on the means testing and based on certain provisions and protections. It was also a compromise to the extent that it provided support for early childhood education, which we know is necessary. But, Mr. President, what happened in the process was this bill was effectively turned into a bill that was rejected last year and no longer resembles the original bill that I think was a rational compromise. As it stands now, it is unconstitutional with regard to 16.6, with regard to provision of funds for a sectarian education. And I think at this point in time, it offers little value to the people of Wyoming, the hardworking people of Wyoming, to our communities. It targets $20 million of funds. This is a $20 million expense that is almost certainly unconstitutional. For those reasons, I cannot support this bill, and I would encourage the body to reject it.
Senator Landon.
So, Mr. President, it's fascinating. The 17 years that I've been coming down here, you know, sometimes this happens, and it's really put you in a difficult spot. I sponsored this bill because I really, we've got an amazing school in my community. It's a private school, and having toured it not long ago again and reacquainted with some of the folks in that school, I wanted to try to do something to help, particularly those kids that I thought about that don't have the opportunity to even consider a school like that. That's not fair. I mean, as much as a church can help, or the community can help, or a neighborhood, there's a lot of kids that just don't have a chance. So I sponsored a bill that I thought would work, and now it's not my bill anymore. I mean, it just isn't. It's something entirely different. I don't know if we pass this, if it's gonna have a chance or not. I was hoping to go home with something on this front, because I thought it was time for us to get a look at it and see if we couldn't make something work. And my worry, fellow senators, is that we're not gonna make it to the finish line with this. I worry about the means testing, just like my friend behind me just stated. I just have a little bit of heartburn with $6,000 to anybody who wants it. So, I don't know, Mr. President, that's the conundrum, isn't it? When a bill gets changed to this extent and your name's on it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Boner, then Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and for the bill. I understand that we had, very strong opinions, very strong discussions about all the different amendments, all the different options. And those are good discussions. I imagine if this bill moves forward, as I imagine it will, and hopefully gets implemented in law, we'll still have opportunities to make those adjustments. I think of all the work we've done on charter schools and every bill that we've had year after year, making those adjustments as we plow that new earth. This is worthwhile work, Mr. President. It needs to move forward. We need to get something going this year while we have a supportive elected official in the executive branch who's going to administer it well. While we have lots of unknowns, absolutely, we've talked about those unknowns. But the solution to dealing with those unknowns is to press forward and provide this much-needed option for our constituents, for people who maybe have kids that don't fit well within our government education system. This is an important option for them. And so I have a few things, if I were king for a day, that I would change in this bill. But I'm still very much in support of it. We need to move this conversation forward. We need to produce something tangible. And for that reason, I ask you to support this bill.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. President, we don't often see a bill with 31 amendments on it. This bill has been so changed that probably the originators don't recognize it. They still want to salvage something out of it, but I can't support it with 31 amendments.
Further discussion. Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. President. I certainly echo the same sentiments as the senator that just spoke. There was a point in time when this bill was looking like maybe I could jump on board. You know, as a former public school teacher, I had somebody say, well, are you just concerned that, you know, public schools will lose money? No, that's not it at all. I'm all for, you know, school choice. You know, we have charter school options, we have, you know, virtual options, we have private, we have a whole lot of things that right now without this bill. But this bill is clearly unconstitutional. And what really surprises me about some of the folks in here is we use that Constitution when we want to, and when we don't want to, we just dance around those things that are clearly in there. So that $20 million that we have in there, we're gonna be spending that on lawyers. And I think that's a shame, because I think there was a chance where this bill could have maybe gotten a little more support. But as the good senator from Natrona County said, it's been hammered into oblivion. And without transparency, without accountability, without any kind of, you know, testing or anything at all that might show us that, you know, they're getting their bang for their buck, those people that are getting $6,000 a piece for their kids, I can't support it. I hope you don't either.
Senator Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill as it is now is very similar to the bill that the Senate body supported last year, and I was asking you to support it again. We now have an opportunity to provide universal school choice to all children. Please support the bill.
Since you're not ready for the question. House Bill 166, Education Savings Account 1, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk will call the roll.
House Bill 166, third reading, roll call. Anderson? No. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? No. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis excused. French? Aye. Furphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Kolb? Aye. Landon? No. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? No. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 166, 20 aye, 10 no, 1 excused.
House Bill 166, Education Savings Accounts 1, having received a vote of the majority of members elect the Senate. House Bill 166 has passed the Senate. Senator Baldwin, you passed your last chance to talk on a bill. Would you like to have the floor for a minute? Being you don't get to make any more comments? All right. I sat there patiently waiting for you to get up for your last time. You've got a chance on the budget later. That message is from the House.
From the House of Representatives, Mr. President, the following messages are all dated March 7, 2024. Message number 273. Mr. President, Senate File 41, Banking Division, Classification and Salary Exemptions, failed to pass the House on third reading. Ayes 28, noes 34. Message number 272, concurrence requested. Mr. President, Senate File 13, Federal Land Use Plans, Legal Actions Authorized, passed the House on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 47, noes 15. House respectfully asks the Senate to concur. Message number 272, concurrence requested. Mr. President, Senate File 13, Federal Land Use Plans, Legal Actions Authorized, passed the House on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 47, noes 15. Message number 274, concurrence requested. Mr. President, Senate File 75, Omnibus Water Bill Construction, passed the House on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 61, excused 1. Message number 274, Mr. President, Senate File 75, Omnibus Water Bill Construction, passed the House on third reading in an amended form. This is a corrected copy. Ayes 61, excused 1. House respectfully asks the Senate to concur by adopting amendments. Signed, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you, Randy. Senator Steinmetz, are you ready on message 272 on Senate File 13 engrossed?
Thank you, Mr. President. I am.
Clerk, read it in, please.
Okay.
Message number 272, referencing Senate File 13, Federal Land Use Plans, Legal Actions Authorized.
Senator Steinmetz.
Mr. President, I would move concurrence on message 272, which is original Senate File 13, Federal Land Use Plans, Legal Actions Authorized, and ask you to vote no. Mr. President, the other body made a few amendments. First of all, they added more borrowing authority to the bill, which is not so bad. But then they allowed a Board of County Commissioners with standing by resolution to request funding from Management Council. So I would really like the opportunity to go down the hallway and visit with them about this change. It's, the bill title contemplates the legislature to prosecute actions, not county commissioners through the Attorney General's office. And so I think we need to have a discussion about that.
Thank you. The motion is that the Senate do concur on Senate File 13 engrossed and vote no. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Concurrence votes, Senate File 13, Anderson? No. Baldwin? No. Barlow? No. Whiteman? No. Boner? No. Bouchard? No. Brennan? No. Case? Aye. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? No. Ellis excused. French? No. Furphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? No. Kinski? No. Cole? No. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott, conflict? Nethercott, conflict. Correction, Ellis, also conflict. Pappas? Pappas, no. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? No. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Steinmetz? No. President Driscoll?
No.
No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Concurrence vote on Senate File 13. 1 aye, 28 noes, 2 conflict.
By your vote, you have failed to concur on Senate File 13 engrossed. Senator Steinmetz, are you ready on Message 274 on Senate File 75 engrossed?
Yes, Mr. President, I am.
Could we have it read in, please?
Message number 274, referencing Senate File 75, Omnibus Water Bill Construction.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move concurrence on message 274, which is original Senate File 75 Omnibus Water Bill Construction, and ask the Senate to vote no. Fellow senators, we have muddied the waters a little bit here in our discussions with the House Appropriations Committee, which is where this bill was sent, rather than the Agriculture Committee. They're trying to talk about purposes of a statewide municipal and rural domestic water supply and adding redundancy of domestic water delivery systems statewide. They put in some ARPA dollars and took out some general fund dollars, which we had put in as the Select Water Committee. So we really need to go down the hall and have a discussion and try to clear up this muddy water. Thank you, Mr. President. Vote no.
The motion is the Senate do concur on Senate File 75 engrossed and vote no. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Concurrence vote, Senate File 45. Anderson? No. Baldwin? No. Barlow? No. Beitman? No. Boner? No. Bouchard? No. Brennan? No. Case? No. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? No. Ellis? Excused. French? No. Furphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? No. Kinski? No. Kolb? No. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? No. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Steinmetz? No. President Driscoll?
No.
No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Concurrence vote on Senate File 75, 30 no, 1 excused.
By your vote, you have failed to concur on Senate File 75 engrossed. Committee will be Gru Chairman, Steinmetz, and Driscoll. Signing of enrolled acts. Senate Enrolled Act number 48.
Senate Enrolled Act number 48, being original Senate File 34, Act relating to criminal procedure.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 48, originally being Senate File 34. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act number 49.
Senate Enrolled Act number 49, being original Senate File 125, an act relating to gaming.
I'm about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 49, originally being Senate File 125. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act number 50.
Senate Enrolled Act number 50, being original Senate File 47, an act relating to compensation and benefits.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 50, originally being Senate File number 47. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act number 51.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 51, being original Senate File 24, an act relating to public utilities.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 51, originally being Senate File Number 24. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act Number 52.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 52, being original Senate File 99, an act relating to public health and safety.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 52, originally being Senate File 99. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act Number 53.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 53, being original Senate File 23, an act relating to public utilities.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 53, originally being Senate File 23. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act Number 54.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 54, being original Senate File 109, an act relating to the protection of constitutional rights.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 54, originally being Senate File 109. I have so signed. Senate Enrolled Act Number 55.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 55, being original Senate File 6, an act relating to professions and occupations.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act Number 55, originally being Senate File Number 6. I have so signed. The desk with 15 minutes left.
Mr. President, I move we stand adjourned until 8 a.m. Friday, March 8th.
Announcements.
8. You? P.
Announcements.
P.
Okay. Rules Committee will meet tomorrow morning at 7:30 in 113. You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, no. Stands adjourned till 8 a.m. Friday, March 8th.